Welcome back to Beyond the Cage, everyone. I'm Gabe Benchamal. So a few days ago, Dana White just announced a lot of high-profile fights for the upcoming events in 2024. Some that were already confirmed, some reported by reliable sources, and others that we had no clue that were coming. So let's take a listen.
What's up, guys? Merry Christmas. I got some fight announcements for you. So, February 17th, UFC 298 in Anaheim, number 3 ranked Rob Whittaker versus number 6 Paulo Costa. Also on the card, number 8 ranked Jeff Neal versus the number 10 ranked undefeated Ian Gary. And I know, we said that fight was on UFC 299, but it's not. It's on 298 now. Deal with it. February 24th in Mexico City. You already know Moreno versus Albazi is on the card. We are adding number 3 ranked Brian Ortega versus number 2 ranked Yair Rodriguez. Moreno and Albazi is the main event, but do not fear. That fight is so badass that Ortega versus Rodriguez is a 5-round co-main event. All right, moving on to March 30th in Atlantic City. The women's flyweight matchup between the number 2 ranked Erin Blanchfield versus the number 3 ranked Manion Ferro. Blanchfield is on a 9-fight win streak. Ferro is on an 11-fight win streak, and neither one of these women has lost a fight in 4 years. That is such a badass matchup. Now, what everybody's been waiting for. No main events or anything like that, but I will tell you April 13th. UFC 300, number 2 ranked Yuri Prohaska versus number 5 ranked Alexander Rakic. Former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling moves up to featherweight to face number 7 ranked Calvin Kattar and the return of Bo Nickel. He hasn't lost a fight in 5. He's got 5 wins, all coming by finish. He's 5-0. And he is taking on Cody Brundage. Brundage's last 4 fights, his last 4 wins, have all come by first-round finish. So, that is the lineup I have for you guys right now. I'll have more coming after the new year. Merry Christmas, and have a happy holiday, everybody.
Lots of high-stakes matchups here, so let's break down all of the announcements. For UFC 298, we have Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa and Ian Gary versus Jeff Neal moving from 299 to 298. This beefs up the card pretty significantly. It was already shaping up to be a nice card with Henry Cejudo and Merab Dvalishvili and obviously Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria, but now I feel that the Anaheim card is going to be a lot more whole. The one thing I'm concerned though is if Paulo Costa will actually make the walk for this fight. Costa already has 5 cancellations in his last 7 official fight announcements, and actually one of those was with Robert Whittaker back in February of last year at UFC 284 in Australia. But when it comes down to the matchup and how it plays out in the middleweight division, I really like it. And with Israel Adesanya out of the picture for a bit, they might want to try their luck at the new middleweight champion Sean Strickland. Now for Gary versus Neal, it's just a simple rebooking. They were supposed to fight last August, but Neal had to pull out of the fight. I really like that they booked this matchup because it plays really nicely into what these guys need for their career trajectory. People forget Ian Gary's only 26 years old and is ranked in the top 10 of the welterweight division, so this is a next logical challenge for him if he wants to get to the title. His career accolades so far have been very impressive, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to accomplish in this fight. But don't sleep on Jeff Neal at all. I think he's definitely capable of taking Ian Gary's O from him, as he went shot for shot with Shavkat Rakhmonov last time around. Now for the UFC's return to Mexico, this one is going to be really awesome. So of course we know that Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi are going to be headlining the UFC Mexico card, as was confirmed in the UFC 296 press conference last week. But to the actual meat and potatoes of the announcement, we have Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez 2. If you don't recall, around 2 years ago, the fight got stopped because Ortega's shoulder popped out. Luckily, he's back and ready to go, and this fight should be on a pay-per-view main card or main event of Fight Night because it's that good. I think they're kind of concerned that if Ortega pops his shoulder out again, they don't want to have a lackluster main event, so I understand why they did this. It's also really nice that Dana booked Yair and Brian to fight in Mexico because both of these guys have Mexican heritage, so it just makes sense. In terms of the matchup, I liked it a year and a half ago, and I still love it now. This fight screams violence, and if both guys stay healthy during the fight, this could be a fight of the year contender. So the third big fight announcement is UFC Fight Night Atlantic City on March 30th, being headlined by Erin Blanchfield and Manon Fiorot. Guys, I know how you feel about women's main event fight nights, but this is different.
You gotta believe me.
Both Blanchfield and Fiorot are gunning for that title, and being undefeated in the UFC really helps their case. The issue is that they're going to have to deal with Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko during their trilogies, so they might as well fight to see who gets the fight for the title next. Like I said before, they're undefeated in the UFC, and their only losses on the record have been split decisions in their early pro days. But what we're really all giddy for in 2024 is UFC 300. So many names have been thrown out for who might be on the card, but we're actually starting to get a taste of what the card might look like. So we have Yuri Prochaska versus Alexander Rakic, Aljamain Sterling versus Calvin Kattar, and Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. These are massive names being added here. The Battle of Eastern Europe comes to Las Vegas, and I'm all here for it. Yuri Prochazka has never had a bad fight, and I believe this will be a banger. Then we have the most intriguing announcement out of all this. We have Aljamain Sterling moving up to featherweight to fight Calvin Kattar. Aljo said in his weekly scraps that he doesn't even know if he's going to be on the main card. And for arguably the greatest bantamweight of all time to not be on the main card of UFC 300 is criminal. It kind of goes to show how stacked this UFC 300 could be when it's all finally revealed. In terms of Aljo stepping up to fight a featherweight, I think this is a perfect matchup. Kattar is right there with some of the best featherweights in the world, and he's a perfect challenge for him to get his feet wet at 145. And for the Boston finisher, he has a chance to put one of the greatest bantamweights of all time on the list of his resume. Plus, he's coming off a pretty long layoff due to a knee injury, so it's going to be a good chance to see if he still got it. And then finally, Bo Nickel taking on Cody Brundage. Do we all remember when Dana White said we would be blown away at who the first early prelim of the night was? And then Bo Nickel goes on Joe Rogan and then talks about how he's going to be fighting at UFC 300. And then we get this announcement. So that's pretty much your answer to who's opening up the UFC 300 early prelims. Bo wanted to fight a good grappler, and now he's got one. It's a good step up in competition considering he only has 5 pro MMA fights. I also think the strategy that the UFC's implemented to booking Bo Nickel fights has been really smart. He seems to be only scheduled for big pay-per-view events. Bo was on John Jones' return card, and he was on International Fight Week. This large gap in scheduling allows him to improve vastly from fight to fight. So if I'm the UFC, I'm trying to maximize his exposure while also giving him the chance to improve very quickly. And now he's slated to be opening up UFC 300, so it's very exciting. That's all the news that came out from this announcement. Let's see what the fans have to say about it.
UFC 300 has received their first 3 fights, and for some reason, people seem disappointed. Dana White has been talking up UFC 300 like the card is going to blow your mind. He just announced these 3 fights that I don't even think are going to be that relative when the full card comes out. The biggest fight he announced is Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. I find it hard to believe that this isn't a main card fight, but it might end up being the main card opener. The second fight he announced is Aljamain Sterling versus Calvin Kattar. Sterling making his featherweight debut. I'm pretty sure this is going to be on the prelims. I mean, Aljo's arguably the best bantamweight of all time, and he's going to be on the prelims. And this fight is without a doubt going to be on the prelims, and considering Bo Nickel has been only on pay-per-views, that's a steal. Even though Bo Nickel's going to be a massive favorite like he always is, Cody Brundage is still an exciting fighter, and this one should be fun. If these are the only fights that Dana can announce at this point, I can only imagine what he's cooking up for the rest of the card. For how hyped up this event will be, I'd say don't get discouraged. Just sit back and watch Dana cook.
So Hayden made one really excellent point there that people aren't really seeming to get when this announcement came out. And that is that if these were the fights that Dana White is just starting to announce, imagine what he has planned when the big announcement comes. He grouped this UFC 300 announcement with all of the Fight Night announcements. Don't you think he'll make a big official announcement where he goes live on the UFC Instagram where he did last year when he announced a bunch of fights? He just recorded it on his phone while he was vacationing somewhere. He's just giving us a little bit of a teaser to see what UFC 300 could actually look like. Like someone says here, how do we know these are on the prelims? That's what everyone is upset about. And yeah, it's true. We don't know if these are going to be on the prelims or they're going to be on the main card. I think people are upset that these fights specifically are the first ones being announced because they're not super overwhelming. People like Yuri Prochazka and Bo Nickel, but they're part of the newer UFC generation. And for example, someone says here, UFC 300 needs some OGs, Dustin, Gaethje, Holloway type fighters. 100% agree, and I think Dana White knows this. Remember guys, Dana White saved Brock Lesnar's announcement for UFC 200 1 month before the event happened. But that's all the fight announcements that Uncle Dana has cooked up for us. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I'm Gabe Benchimol. This has been Beyond the Cage, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.